Father, I'd like to ask you a question. Who's ever gone without eating anything all day long? I usually hear boys and girls when they come in from school or they come, oh, I'm so hungry, what can I have to eat? Because they're always hungry. Well, there's a story in the Bible about a time, as far as we know, they didn't eat anything all day long. And it was one time when Jesus was with the disciples, and they were there and they were listening to what he had to say. And if he got up and moved, they went and moved. But they sat all day or stood all day listening to what Jesus had to say. Well, it came after lunch and nobody stopped to eat, as far as we know. It came towards supper time. And Jesus went to one of his disciples and he said, listen, you go and feed all these people because they have nothing to eat. And the disciple looked at him and said, what? How am I going to feed all these people? There's at least 5,000 men and the women and the children. It would take years and years of wages. And we're out in the desert. Where could we go? And Jesus said, find me some food. Now Philip, I'm not sure what he did because that's all we heard, but we do know that one of the disciples called Andrew, he was Peter's brother. Now he was one that always was doing things. So he went round, got any food, got any food, got any food? He might have rounded one all the people and they probably said no. Until he found one person who had some food. And that was a little boy. And Andrew brought him to Jesus. Now this boy, he had a very unusual lunch. He had, let's put these down there. He had 2 fish. Now they didn't look like these, but they were fish. They probably were about that long, very, very dry, salty. And he had those, but he also had 5 small loaves. Now they weren't loaves of bread like we know today, but it was 1, 2, where's the other ones? 3, 4, there was one more, 5. So he had 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Now this bread was just like our dinner rolls, but they didn't have nice jam and peanut butter on them. They were dry, no butter, nothing on them. And that's what he had. His mom had packed his lunch when he left that morning. And he had carried that lunch all day. Now, I worked with boys and girls a lot. And I've taken them on outings where we've got onto a bus. And as soon as we got on the bus, they wanted to eat their lunch. Because they said they were hungry. But this boy hadn't eaten it all day long. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure he was thinking, I'll give it to Jesus so Jesus has something to eat. And you know he did. He gave it to Jesus. And he smiled. Jesus maybe smiled at him or maybe said thank you. I'm sure he did. But then Jesus took those 5 little loaves, dried and crusty, those 2 salty fish, and it says he prayed. And he says, Lord, make it so everybody can eat. And then he told everybody to sit down. And it was counted, there was 5,000 men, plus the women and the children. And then Jesus took the 2 fish, the 5 loaves, he broke them up, and he handed them to the disciples. And he gave them to, so you go feed the people. So I'm sure Andrew went over, here, take some. And the person looked, what? This is going to feed everybody? So maybe they just took a little. And the next person took some. And the next person took some. But you know, it says that everybody had enough to eat. They were so full, it was like after Thanksgiving dinner. And they were so full, they couldn't eat another thing. But you know what's the amazing part? All these people were fed. But it says there was 12 baskets full of it left over. I don't know where they got the baskets from. I don't know what size baskets they were. All I know is they were baskets. And some you see pictures, they're like this, and some are a bit smaller. It doesn't matter what size they were. What matters is it was left over. What did the disciples do with it? I think they ate it for the next week and a half probably. Or maybe they gave it out to the other people another day. I don't know. But you know what I like about that story? It talks about Jesus. Now, Jesus was the Son of God. Now, we've talked about this before. And Jesus can do anything. He could have just made those people full. But he didn't. He wanted to show the people who he was. And I wonder today, what do you really think about Jesus? Was he just a man? And lots of stories about him? Or maybe this is the first time you've ever heard about Jesus. But Jesus was the Son of God. And maybe, as we learn later in the Bible, that Jesus died on the cross because he loved each one of us. He was willing to give our life so we could go to heaven. But the only way you can do that is by asking Jesus to come into your life. And maybe this is the first time you've heard the story. Maybe you've heard it lots of times. But what do you think about Jesus? Let's just stop and ask him to help us to understand it. And maybe you'd like to ask Jesus into your life now. You can ask him right now. Dear Lord, we thank you so much that you loved each one of us. Lord, we thank you for the story of the feeding of the 5,000. But most of all, we thank you that you died on the cross for us. Amen.